learn a lot about Barack Obama, and we'll learn a lot about ourselves as a country when he faces a true crisis that challenges him personally to see what he's made of. And it'll be interesting to watch what happens. And on that note, I'm going to stop. Ask me about anything. Ask me about Obama, ask me about the administration, ask me about the economy, ask me about the media, ask me about Chris Matthews, ask me about who's also a pen dad, ask me about the web, the media, Newsweek, anything and everything. I'm completely open. Yes. Yes, oh yes, and thank you very much, by the way. Thank you for helping to make all this possible.
May I address myself to your daughter and say that your father is taller and better looking than yours on television. This is not my question. Question number one is, do you think we should buy stock in J. Crew?
I think you're probably a little late. You probably should have bought it right around the time you wrapped up the nomination.
Well, who knew she was going to buy my real question is, let me direct you back to the media, because as an educated journalist, I have a problem, and it's with your publication. When is it correct for a publication like Newsweek not to do a story or an interview for the greater good? I'm referring particularly to the Paul Krugman interview. I walk around with that copy of Newsweek, and I have not read it because I don't want to know what a Nobel Prize winner has to suggest. I mean, if you know so much, why don't you pick up the phone? I can't believe that a Nobel awardee, a Nobel laureate, couldn't get through to anybody and say, let me sit down with you and tell you what I think. I mean, I don't know whether he did that or not, but address yourself to that. I mean, his interview in the paper, because to me, he's like Rush Limbaugh, in a way, even more generous. Somebody agrees with me.
That's okay. Yeah.
I'm going to use Reagan's quote, I paid for this microphone.
Have you used that line before here? Okay. So what you're saying is, why did we give a platform to Paul Krugman? Because we know what his criticisms are. We can read them in the New York Times all the time. What's the point of putting him on the cover? Because we know what his views are, and in your view, he's just as narrow-minded in his own way as Limbaugh? Okay.
To have his say.
Yes.
I'm really talking about the timing of it. I mean, Rush Limbaugh comes out and says, I want this man to fail.
Yeah.
And who, a lot of people listen to him, but not people like me. But I listen to a Nobel laureate.
Yeah.
Who gets his prize in economics.
Yes.
And
I'm still trying to figure out what your objection is. You know.
I don't have an objection. I'm asking you for an editorial comment.
Oh, well, I'm glad we put Krugman on the cover because I think Paul Krugman has been extremely influential from the other side. As you point out, he's kind of the outrider on the other side, saying that Obama has been entirely too cautious. You know, here Obama is being clobbered, and it is a pretty lengthy list, okay? I don't even have the whole thing. And he's not responsible for all this, but he amplified the process that began with the TARP last fall. You know, the TARP is $700 billion in lending, not spending, but a lot of it's just going to be spending. We're never going to get that money back from AIG, for example. I don't think. So $700 billion for the TARP, $787 billion for the stimulus package, $35 billion for the S-chip expansion, $40 billion for a supplemental just the other week, $3.5 trillion for the new budget. I think $500 billion in loan commitments for consumer loans, auto loans, and so on that people don't talk about very much, but are very important. I mean, $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money, and you know, that's why the American people are concerned about the long-range annual deficits and the national debt. And so from the right, you have tremendous criticism of Barack Obama as being a closet socialist who's out to expand the reach of government, have government take over everything. And, dictate health care, dictate education policy, put in the cap and trade legislation on pollution, all these, quote, socialist schemes, etc. That's what you hear from Rush Limbaugh. And the right saying that Obama is too ambitious, too eager to use government, too activist, and too bold by half. And then you have Paul Krugman sort of on the other side saying, what is this faith in markets? I mean, the banks have failed. Take over the banks, for example. There should have been more stimulus a year ago, according to Krugman. I mean, Krugman is more stimulus, faster, more control of credit institutions, more regulation. I mean, he makes Tim Geithner look like Rush Limbaugh. And he has a very influential perch on the op-ed page of the New York Times. And he's a Nobel Prize winner. And he's a interesting curmudgeon. And everybody in this room knows who he is. And our role at Newsweek, one of our roles, is to try to explain how the world works. And Paul Krugman is very much part of the ecosystem of opinion that helps drive politics today. Are we going to sell a whole lot of newsstand magazines with a bearded economist, even though we tried to make him look both interesting and ominous, if you remember what the cover looks like? No. But that's who our readers are. Our readers want to know about somebody like Paul Krugman.